Let's jump right into our first caller. We have Sherry in Mount Vernon, Illinois. Sherry, you're live with Eric and Thomas. How are you doing?
Hello, and it's Cherie.
Sherry, sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right, so what did you want to talk about today?
Well, I have a friend, Janet, and yesterday we were discussing, she wanted to know how did I know that God was real? Because she was saying that he was not. Well, she didn't say that he did not exist, but she wanted me to prove to her that he did.
Okay.
And there is no way to prove to somebody something exists that you can't tangibly, see or touch. But I was telling her, I know that he is real because I feel him inside of me. And she said that's not good enough for her. So
can I ask you, Cherie, is there anything else in your life that you hold to that standard?
as far as?
Well, so if I were to say, I believe in Muhammad, and I know Muhammad is true even though I can't prove it, or I believe in Zeus or Thor, I don't have any tangential proof, but I know in my heart that it's true. Would you accept those as true?
Well, I don't know. I believe in supernatural. I mean, whatever somebody's higher power is, I do believe that they have one. Now, what that higher power is that they have, I'm not sure. But for me, it's God. But not only that,
hold on.
Him.
Let's nail down the specific really quick because I just want to make sure that I got you right. Were you saying that if somebody says that they believe in Thor, God of Thunder, and they know in their heart it's true, that you would accept that there is a God flying around with a hammer, Mjolnir, and can control the elements? Like,
I'm not saying that. If they gave me experience, like for example, I had a child, my first son. He almost died, like literally. He weighed 2 pounds and 14 ounces. Mm-hmm. My faith at that time wasn't really, really strong, but it was strong enough where I knew to fast and to pray. So I did that for 24 hours. And the next phone call that I got, well, let me back up. Before that, the hospital called and was like, well, he may not make it, and he has liver disease and something else. And basically they thought that he would die. Mm-hmm. So I prayed, I fasted, and then the next phone call that I got, they was like, I don't know what happened yesterday, but it's completely gone. He did 360, and he's doing fine, and today he is 27. So either by coincidence that happened, or I don't know, but...
Oh, no. There's a very good explanation.
Well, Cherie, I want to ask you a question, though, before we dive into that, and that's, if you had fasted and he had died, would that be evidence for you that no God existed?
No, because in the Bible, David had fasted for his son.
So it sounds like no matter how the outcome turned out, that your belief in a deity is based on more than just that.
It's just experience afterward. I've seen several miracles, not just one, but many when people call upon God.
Tell us
I have seen it work.
Tell us the most convincing.
Yeah, what's your best?
A baby. She was in a coma for, I think, 6 or 7 months.
Okay.
And the mother of the child wanted to take the baby out the hospital to her church. Mm-hmm. But the doctors kept telling her, no, don't do that. Well, eventually she did. Okay. And it's on YouTube, too. But anyway, she took the baby to the church, and then the minister lady, she prayed over that child. And, service was going on like nothing was happening. And while she's praying and singing and glorifying, the baby just wakes up.
Okay.
After all this time,
Cherie,
she just wakes up.
I'm curious if you have miracles that you've witnessed personally, because there's a lot of stuff online that I can point to that seems like excellent proof of something, but we don't know the backstory. We don't know the details, because I've seen stories of this type of stuff happening where a pastor claimed to raise a baby from the dead, and it turned out that he had drugged the baby, and it was horrific, but it went viral on YouTube. I'm kind of curious because I can look up videos like that online too. And I think what Eric and I are more wondering is, are there miracles that you've witnessed personally in your life, either that, you've been healed and that's the only explanation that you have, or that someone that you witnessed, you saw it firsthand? If there's stuff like that.
I have a friend in Chicago. He was shot 9 times.
Okay, hold on a second.
And pronounced dead at the hospital.
Cherie?
Like literally.
Cherie?
Yes, I'm here.
Thomas asked you a question.
Oh, I'm trying to answer it. What did he say?
Well, let her continue.
Okay, sorry. I thought that was
I thought he said any personal experiences from me.
Okay, I apologize. Go ahead.
Well, this is a personal experience. This isn't something that I saw on YouTube. But I had a friend. He was shot 9 times. When we got to the hospital, he was pronounced dead at the hospital. Dead. So his mom, his father, I believe it was his aunt, they called in the pastor. I don't know what took place behind those doors because I wasn't behind there. But all I know is when they came back out, they were crying. He's breathing now and this and that. So who else could have done that? I mean, he was pronounced
he was
dead
at a hospital, wasn't he?
And they said that he was dead.
He had doctors around him, didn't he?
And they let his parents in the room. They let the pastor in the room. It was no doctors there. It was just those 3. And whatever they did back there, I don't know. But when they came out, that man was breathing.
They probably doctored. I mean,
there was no doctors in the room.
There are doctors in a hospital, I would presume, right? So
yes, but they pronounced him dead.
Yes,
and let the family come in and say goodbyes and whatever.
So would you agree that there are people who are pronounced dead who then it turns out aren't? Right? Like we have a history in human society of people being pronounced dead, right?
There were cases, Cherie, there have been cases in human history where they used to bury coffins I believe in the UK, with bells next to the coffin, because every once in a while they would bury someone alive and the person would wake up and they were in some form of a coma and they came back. And, the human body, it's extremely resilient. And there are times when, I'm not sure if you've studied much on near-death experiences, but it happens all the time where people, they appear to die. They're not dead. It's near death, but their heart stops and it seems like their, vital functions are ceasing. And, from an outside perspective, it seems like they're dead. And then they come back. And the insane thing about this is that whatever culture they're in, whether it's in the United States, whether they were brought up in a Christian household, whether they're in the Middle East and were brought up Muslim, whether they were born in India and were brought up Hindu, the experiences that they have upon death almost always mirror exactly the cultural influences that they've been exposed to. So for you telling me that story, I've heard very, very similar stories to that coming from people in India. And to them, that's a just absolute proof that, Shiva and Brahman and all these other gods are real and that the Hindu afterlife is real. And I want to know personally, because to me, I hear both of those stories, and I don't think that they're mutually compatible. I don't think that the God of the Bible and the Hindu gods can both be real at the same time. And if one is saying that the other is wrong and they can't both be right, is it possible that they're both wrong and that there's something going on neurologically in our brains, all of the chemical storm that's occurring? You have all of these psychoactive chemicals in your brain that are naturally created. And when you die or when you come close to death, your brain starts freaking out and panicking, and it just releases this flood of chemicals that can explain a lot of this stuff and can be recreated. Scientists can induce feelings of having an out-of-body experience or having a near-death experience and having this feeling like you're moving towards a light going through a tunnel and stuff. They can do that by triggering regions of the brain. And what I'm curious about is how this story is proof of a specific deity, or if maybe there's other options that might explain it without having to suspend our everything that we know about how the natural world works?
Well, like I said, that's just one of many experiences. And before we go any further, I used to be just like you. I didn't believe. I was not raised to believe in not only God but in nothing. My household was horrible.
Sherry,
and I found God on my own.
Sherry.
Yes.
You know nothing about us.
Well, I really don't want to know anything about you because you're going with something that is against what I
Thomas
believe.
And I were both born and raised Christians.
Well, I wasn't.
So we're nothing like you.
We are total opposites.
We come from very different backgrounds. That doesn't mean that we can't explore how the world works together and hopefully get somewhere.
But I'm saying I'm opposite from you. You two were raised Christians. I was not raised that way.
Right.
So we came from two different backgrounds totally.
But we live in a world.
I didn't get to be a Christ-like individual until I got older.
Sheree,
which I found God by myself.
We both live
because I was taught or forced to know God, because that's not true for me.
We both live in the same world with the same facts, right? I mean, it's not.
I don't know.
Truth is not different.
You just said I know nothing about you.
Okay.
So if I know nothing about you, I don't know what world that you live in. I just know the world that I live in.
I'm talking about a world where you can point at a place on a map and we can both go there. 2 + 2 = 4. When you drop something, it goes down because of gravity that we share, right? We share a world together with factual information about it that we can both come to understand.
Where are you getting your facts from?
Well, it doesn't. He's not talking about the sources that we go to for studying the world. He's talking about our world, our cosmos. We're in the same thing. We're in this place together.
Would you agree with that we both live in the same world, the factual world?
We're not in a world that operates differently from the world that you're in. The rules, the laws of physics apply equally to both of us.
I agree with that.
Okay. So if we can agree there, then we can start to take apart other things. Now, there's a reason why both of us came up with possible situations in which your story could have been not, created, supernatural or created by a god, right? And
it could have not, but it also could have been.
Oh, sure.
Nobody can prove that it wasn't.
Well, we don't live like that, though. And I would actually say that you don't either.
That. If you can't tell me, if I tell you that the sky was blue and you say, no, Sheree, it's yellow, you're going to have to prove to me that it's yellow. You just can't tell me, well, that's not really blue. You're not really seeing blue.
Sheree, you're absolutely right.
But I'm seeing yellow.
Sheree, you're right.
So
you're absolutely right. So you're telling me there's a God.
It wasn't God.
Sheree, you're telling me there's a God, and I'm saying you have to prove it. You're absolutely right.
If this was a courtroom,
I am a living proof. I am a living proof.
Then,
Sheree, if this was a courtroom and someone said that you committed a crime, the burden of proof is on them to show that you committed the crime. It's not on you to defend yourself. You are by default innocent. So we live in a world where extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And we're able to test the world, and we're able to experiment and see how stuff works, and we're able to measure it and build different machines and tools to get more accurate understandings of how this world works. And so to come along and say that everything that we know about the natural world is suddenly turned on its head and that there are these supernatural things that can't be explained except for by a deity, that's an extraordinary claim. And it requires a tremendous burden of proof to show that that's the case. For us, we say, okay, what requires more assumptions? We can look at a supernatural claim, and I'll bring up the virgin birth. We can say all the laws of anatomy and biology and genetics and how, fertility works and stuff. If we have to throw all of that out the window to assume that there was a virgin birth. Or what's more likely, that either the story is mythological, it's legendary, or that, to put it bluntly, that a Jewish minx would tell a lie. And I just think that there are much easier ways to explain for this stuff without having to suspend our understanding of the world. And until it can be demonstrated, until it can be proven then I think the safest bet is to operate in a way that, well, once we see evidence, then we're happy to change our position.
Yeah. So
how y'all remind me of? My kids. I have been
diagnosed like good
kids. I'm serious. I have been diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and my children, because I can't take no X-ray of my brain to show them, okay, my mind is, broken here. They say, oh, Mom, I can't see it, so it's not true.
Whoa.
There is no way I can X-ray my brain and show them, okay, it's broken here, because I cannot do that.
Okay.
But just because I cannot do that does not mean that it's not true.
Okay.
My feelings, the way that I feel, the doctors feel like, well, you must have this or you must have that.
Cherie?
Yes?
So I feel like we're talking past each other, and I want to address this, right? I bring this up on the show a lot, but I'm assuming you don't watch the show. Do you know what epistemology is?
No.
It's the study of knowledge. It's how you know what you know, the toolbox that you use, right, to determine what is true and what is not true about the world around you, right? Every time you experience something in your life, you're reaching into that toolbox and you're pulling out the best tool that you have to determine whether or not something is true. Okay? So it sounds like we're using different tools. Would you agree with that? Because you gave us what sounds like clear evidence to you that a God is true, and we're not really accepting that. And it feels like there's a misunderstanding, like, we're not using your tools and you're not using ours. Would you agree that that probably summarizes what's going on here?
That probably is the case. And no matter what I say, you're going to say what you have to say, because that's your belief. No matter what you say to me, I'm going to say what I say, because it's my belief.
No, Cherie, hold on. No, Cherie, we both pride ourselves on the fact that we want to know as many true things about this world that we live in and as few false things as possible, right? And because of that, we want to follow where the evidence guides us. And so if it turns out we're wrong, we want to know so that we can learn and we can grow. We don't set on something and say, it doesn't matter what you say, I'm just going to believe it, or just prove you wrong. That's something that religious faith does. We are very much against that, because that does not get us to truth. It just gets stubborn, pig-headed, arguing. And that's not valuable for anyone. So I don't think that you are the kind of person who would sit here and, if in evidence, right? If you had physical, tangible proof about something, you wouldn't stick your fingers in your ears and close your eyes and la, 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 right? You would try to understand what is true, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's why I was a non-believer for so long, because I believed that. I believed that there was no God. I believed that we're just here because I don't even know what I believed back then, how we got here. But I was believing in what people were teaching me about, that there was no God. And we're just here because, and atoms and gases. And I said, well, where did they come
Cherie,
from? I don't
you are
know.
saying 2 million things
to be like that.
You said a whole lot of things that I would love to address. We can't get to all of them today.
She touched on one thing I want to bring up, though, that I don't want to leave hanging, and that's that you were saying if you have, you feel like you have, something that's happening in your brain that you're worried about, you're concerned about, and you're like, they can't just go in and x-ray it. First of all, if you're concerned about something with your brain, I would recommend getting an fMRI. You can get brain scans. You can go and get stuff tested out.
I had all that stuff. I got anxiety. They put me through everything.
The other thing is, just because you can't see something physically, there are other ways to test it. There are other senses. There are other things that we can, if someone comes along, we don't have the entire field of neuroscience it's a very brand new field. It's only been in the last few decades that we've really started to kind of peel back the layers of the onion to understand how the brain works. And we don't know exactly how the brain works. We know certain regions are associated with certain functions. We know that without a brain, you can't live. We know if you get hit in the head, you go unconscious. We know that it's all rooted in this brain. It comes from the brain, but we don't know the details of how. That doesn't mean that we can't test it. And when we say that we can't see the proof, we don't necessarily mean physically see things with our eyes. Sometimes you can test things and you can get a reading on a piece of paper that tells you, what something is chemically made of, that you need an instrument for. Sometimes you can hear things. Sometimes you can observe the way that people behave, the way that they react. And if you're like, oh my goodness, I just started, feeling extreme, anxiety or panic, or I started hearing noises, we're not disregarding that happens. In fact, I would say that experience is very real to you, that those things.
Oh, it is.
Seeing those things,
yeah.
Feeling those things, hearing those things.
Scary.
I completely acknowledge that you're experiencing that. I would just argue that we know that parts of the brain can cause that you can put electrodes on your brain and stimulate certain regions, and you can cause it naturally. So those are ways that we can physically test, and all the evidence seems to indicate that your brain is able to do that on its own. And so because we can all have these experiences, and you can have, a Sufi Muslim who's in this, trance-like state, who's experiencing a very similar thing as Pentecostals when the music comes on, and they all describe it the same way. It shows me that, we're all biologically similar enough that there's no reason to believe that it's not something that's outside of the natural world, that it's outside of our brains.
Can I piggyback on that really quick? So I also have anxiety and depression. I've actually been diagnosed.
So you understand how I feel.
Yeah, I've actually been diagnosed with clinical depression. It's something that I'm going to have for the rest of my life, right?
And me too.
Yeah,
so
I'm so sorry.
Me too. I'm sorry for you as well. It's awful.
Yeah, I know exactly. My heart goes out to you. If we connect on anything, it's that. But you would know then, like I do, that we have been able to determine that there are feel-good chemicals in your brain, and a lack of those chemicals interacting in your brain can cause that, right? You have your four main, right? You have your serotonin, dopamine, you have your, what else do we got? Endorphins and oxytocin, I think. But there are medications that can help change that brain chemistry, right? There are serotonin reuptake inhibitors. There are just a bunch of, things like that. And using those,
mood stabilizers.
Yeah.
Pills can't solve it, though.
Hold on. Using those, we've been able to determine that lessens the impact of that depression. So with this process, what we've done is we've been able to get closer and closer and closer to understanding it. We're not at the same place we were 500 years ago. There were people who would see somebody who said that they heard voices, and they wouldn't think, oh my gosh, we need to, treat this as a mental illness. Instead, it was, this person is possessed, right? We're growing as a society.
Like that.
Yeah.
She was diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic. She heard voices.
And we understand now that there's a biological component, a chemical component that we can treat together, right? And I'm sure you would agree with me that there are people who say they can hear Elvis or whatever. And, what I'm trying to say is not everybody who hears voices is actually hearing, spirits or something like that. And so what we're doing is we're going back to that toolbox, and we're determining how can we tell one from the other, right? Mm-hmm. And so I want to give you just a few pieces, and if you don't think they're good tools, then you don't have to use them, but they've been very good tools for me, okay? So the main one that I want to give you right now is, the saying is what is it? The plural of anecdote is not evidence. And what that means is, if you have a whole bunch of people who are saying, oh, hey, this is true, that doesn't necessarily make it true. I mean, I think that if you're a Christian, you could probably agree with me that there are a lot of people who believe faiths that you don't believe in. They say it's true, but you would say that that's not true, right? There are
I don't know.
There are spirit healers.
I can't say that for sure, because when I was in the hospital or working there and the nursing homes, when people lay close to death, the
Mm-hmm.
Christians, they will always, literally either ask me or say they see angels or some of my patients, they had dementia. They didn't even know their own spouse's children when they came. Yet they know long lost relatives, and they tell me, well, they're standing right there. When I be like, well, where is she at or he at? Don't you see George? You know, he's standing right there with the angel. And this is like several occasions that this has happened. And I'm like, everybody don't have the brain.
Actually, they do.
Brain waves. No, actually, scientifically, it's been proven that we don't.
Well, hold on.
If we had the same activity, like I forgot your name, but if we all had the exact same, everybody.
My name's Eric.
Eric would be depressed. Everybody would have schizophrenia. Everybody would have, but we don't, because our brain.
Well, can I tell you what
takes what I said out of context?
Can I take the science of that real quick and lay out where it's the same and where it's different?
Yeah, please.
The neurons, the way that neurons are built is the same in every single human. The way that the neurons are organized is different. And the chemical balances are different from person to person. So all of us have serotonin. All of us have dopamine. All of us have these chemicals, and the chemical structure of these chemicals is identical from me to you to someone on the street. And it's the difference is in the quantities. So I might have a lesser amount, or I might have fewer receptors, or my neurons might be organized a little bit differently. But as far as the hardware, the basic hardware, all of our brains, we're working with the same materials. We're working with the same stuff. So when a doctor studies someone's brain, they may be able to run do a genetic test and map out your genome and say, hey, you're more likely to respond better to this drug than someone else because you're more likely to have this genetic illness than someone else. But what they're doing, they're not saying your brain is completely different. It's like an alien brain and it doesn't even have these chemicals. They're looking and they're saying we know enough about how these chemicals work and how brains work to figure out what's different from yours from someone whose brain doesn't have this condition.
That's actually
exactly.
I said,
we don't all have the same, so for them to all see the same.
But we all have human brains.
Well, you know what? I would love to keep going, but I really do have to get ready for work. But we all are genetically together. DNA. Yeah. From animals to humans to everything. How is that possible? The Bible teaches me that Eve is the mother of all living. There's no way I can have anything from me to you if we're not connected some way. That's not possible.
I think that is a wonderful claim that there's evidence that you need to actually show. But I think that is a wonderful, wonderful place to end it. Because, Cherie, hold on.
Then we are we got the same DNA.
So, going back, I'll say that it is better when you don't know something to say, I don't know. You give yourself permission to explore and to learn. And that's how we've been able to come up with everything that we have. Hold on, Cherie.
Find out why that is.
And we have. If you want to go to school to learn it and study it, you are absolutely welcome to.
I also would recommend, it's very hard to explain abiogenesis in, a couple sentences, but I did a very, very laser-focused series called The Story of Life. If you type in Holy Kool-Aid, The Story of Life on YouTube. And
Fully what? I'm sorry. Fully what?
Holy Kool-Aid. As in, don't drink the Kool-Aid with a K.
I think I just saw that. I've seen that. Janet just sent the link to me.
Okay. But in The Story of Life, I start walking through, and it's still a work in progress. I'm going to expand, all the way up into modern humans. But I talk about what we know and how we know it, about how life can arise naturally, how things like RNA and DNA can come about, and all of this stuff, and how it's all chemistry. It's all basically chemicals, and we know that, and we can observe that under a microscope today. And so just because maybe these fields may be new, or they may be something that, I may not understand something, that doesn't mean that someone else doesn't. That doesn't mean that we can't learn how it happened together. And that's the beautiful thing about the world.
Yeah. You don't know has never gotten us anywhere. I don't know has gotten us a lot of places. But I know you've got to go to work. I really, really appreciate you calling in. This has been a nice talk.
Oh, no problem.
You take care.
It was a good chat with you guys.
Cherie, it's been a pleasure.
Bye.
You too. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Aw. You know what?